And the rotations, they were in different places. So they were moving us throughout the country with, like I lived in Dallas, Texas, and then I live in the middle of nowhere in Davenport, Iowa. Like it was really nothing. But they make, that's where they make the John Deere tractors, John Deere. So they, middle of nowhere, Iowa, that's where they're making thousands and thousands and thousands of tractors that go all over the world. Um, for like agriculture. And yeah, I mean, I didn't go to San Jose, but there was an office in San Jose, but then I came to Arizona. And then my boss decided to send me abroad, and then it got fun. then I went to then I went to the UK because it was British. It was a British company, and they had a lot of business in outside of London. Not, London was just the capital, but you had to drive like an hour away from the city to go find like manufacturing facilities. And yeah, that was very neat because I had never done that. And I just felt lucky. And I always had great bosses. Like my bosses were amazing. So yeah, I mean, so after the rotations finished, I ended up back in Arizona. uh I had a broken heart because my relationship didn't work. And one day I was very, very sad, and I decided I was going to leave Arizona. and so and so I went and applied for jobs on Indeed. Indeed, the website, like to look for jobs. Okay, so I just uploaded my resume on Indeed, and I said something good and magical has to happen from uploading the resume. And 3 days later, I got a phone call, and that was NASA. And it was, we have an opportunity with Johnson Space Center. And I said, isn't that NASA? and they said, yes, it's NASA. And I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. I said, I don't, I have some years of experience, but not a lot. And I don't know if you really want me to interview. And the recruiter was being pushy, and he says, yes, you need to interview, please. And I said, okay. So we prepared for like a week. They helped me fix my resume. Like, we cleaned it up a little bit. And then he set up the meetings with the managers at NASA, and it was over Zoom. It was like a Zoom call. And I'm dressed very professional because it's NASA, and you want to look, you want to dress to impress. And when I turn on the cameras, everybody was wearing Hawaiian shirts, like Hawaiian t-shirts. and, and I was just looking at them, and I'm like, okay, Rosa, just please be quiet and do not laugh. Like, don't laugh because this is really funny. Um, and they noticed, and they're like, are you laughing about our shirts? And I was like, yeah, like I was not expecting this. But then I learned they live in Houston, which is really humid, and it's hot, and everybody goes to the water, and it's really normal for them to be wearing, it's like Florida, they're just wearing really comfortable clothes. um but anyway, so it worked out. And a few days later, they made me the offer, and it's been, what, 8 months. And the time flies. Like, I can't even believe, like, I'm working for them. And it's amazing, and it's a family once you join, that world, which we don't call it the real world. We call it like the space world. um and yeah, and I work with people from all over the place. I mean, people that grew up in farms, people that grew up in cities. I talk to, like, people from Japan that work for JAXA, people from ESA. So there's a guy that is Canadian that lives in the Netherlands, but he works for, like, it's very international, it's very diverse. And And so, yeah, I mean, that's I never expected any of that. And it's just like all over the world in one call, you know? So yeah, it's like a dream come true because I knew, you know, I liked the international people and they're here. I work with them every day. Yeah.
Oh, Rosa, you gave me goosebumps telling a story about, broken heart to this, like I got a call from NASA, for this job for NASA. And then of course Hawaiian shirts, That's so funny. I see Marina's hand again. No, just kidding. Yes. Well, all the questions are welcome. Anybody else wants to ask questions, please feel free to do so. We still have time. Well, Marina, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I guess my question is, so you talked about being 17 and coming to the US to study, but I want to ask about before that. Like I want to ask about the girl who was growing up in Mexico and what did you dream about? You said you didn't expect any of this, and from your story it sounds like you didn't have really a plan. It just seems like the life just kind of took you here and there and you were just open to these different opportunities. So my question is, I guess, back to your childhood, what did you dream of being or having what did you dream for your future? And looking back, we're in one of my classes, we are studying Steve Jobs' speech, for the graduating Stanford students, where he talks about connecting the dots. So it sounds like if you had to connect the dots from that little girl to where you are now, what were some of those milestones that you didn't know were milestones at the time, but that really kind of helped you navigate your career? Could you talk to that?
Yes. So before 17, I had no idea. I mean, all I knew is, you know, I grew up in traditional Mexico, okay, where, you know, the woman is expected to get married and have a family, and, you know, it's very traditional. And so by leaving Mexico, I was kind of like a rebel. Okay, I was very adventurous by saying, "Can I?" You know, I asked. I said, "Can I please go to the U.S. and study English for 6 months?" You know, that was the selling point for mom and dad for 6 months. And you know, my aunt and uncle, who were my parents, you know, in Santa Clara, they were like, yes, 6 months, no problem. And then you know, then they realized that I could stay, and it was, you know, for them, I think they wanted me to try. And I was in a straight A student at San Jose State. You know, I had A's, B's, C's. I think one semester I failed a class. But I learned from that, and that kind of like helped me like push myself, right, to like do better, because I didn't like failing. Failing was really embarrassing. And I didn't want that to happen again. So so no, I didn't know. All I knew is that I wanted to go on an adventure for 6 months to learn English, and I had no clue that it was going to turn into 15 years later, here I am. You know, like I'm still here. Um, and as a kid, yeah, I mean, I you know, I knew I liked airplanes. I knew I grew up, you know, seeing my parents being surrounded by airplanes, so I liked that. Um, but you know, when I was a kid living in traditional Mexico, we were told that the women couldn't become pilots, so women couldn't fly. And you know, I was like, okay, you know, you don't fly. And now, you know, I'm seeing a lot of women that are pilots, and there are female astronauts, you know, like they don't only make it to the airplane, they make it to space. So it's really encouraging to see, like, oh wow, like what I grew up with, you know, is completely different from like where I am today. And now the
I want to
milestones.
sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt. I want to jump in and say that there's a famous Russian astronaut, Valentina Tereshkova, who went to space.
Yeah.
So I grew up knowing that I could be an astronaut.
That you could, yeah. So yes, she's super famous. But there are like so many, you know, there are no boundaries in space. So as long as you're a partner or an international partner, they put you into that capsule or house or whatever they call it, and you got to live with everybody, no matter where you're from. So they, you know, yes, there are, you know, I got to meet Russian astronauts this trip. I met Italian astronauts, and one of my colleagues, like my very good engineer coworker, she's from Russia, and she, you know, she left Russia 30 plus years ago, and she's married, had 2 kids, and has been with NASA for like 20 years. So yeah, there are no boundaries. I mean, you know, once you make it to space or to a space agency, the rest is like you're friends with the world. So, but anyway, and then the milestones, like touching points. Well, you know, I always wanted to have like a plan, like what's the plan for the next 6 months? Because school works in semesters. So you have to, you know, what you're doing for the next 6 months, and that's it. And so I, you know, for me, it was like, okay, university, 6 months, 4 years. Like that was my timeline. But once you finish school, it's very scary because there's no more timeline. there's no 6 months, semester, trimester. There's nothing guiding you anymore. And you know, and so I didn't know I was going to be living in DC only for 1 year. I thought I was going to be there forever, and it only lasted 1 year. And then Cobham, I didn't know it was going to be 5 years. I thought it was going to be like, you know, 1 or 2. So you don't know. And at the work, we evaluate the unknown unknowns. So not knowing the unknown, and we just have to wing it. And you know, for the first time, probably in the 15 years that I've been in the U.S., this is the first time that I'm winging it because I don't know. And so I had points, you know, milestones for the first 10 years, 12 years, 13 years in the US, but not anymore. And I'm okay. I'm okay, like not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow or in a year or in a month from now, just because I don't know, I have reached like enough confidence in myself finally that you know, I know if I lose my job tomorrow, or if NASA says we're not going to the moon or whatever, you know, like if there are really bad news happening, I know life is going to be okay. Like I know how to fix a problem now. I know how to work with finances. I know how to look for an apartment. You know, like things that I didn't know 15 years ago that I know now, and that I'm like, yeah, all right, you know, we'll be okay. It's not perfect, but it's going to be okay. So yeah, that's my milestone, I guess. Yeah.